It is Saturday, 1st of August 2020, and it's hot. We had a mini heat wave in these parts yesterday. Back to do my duty with the weekend video, and as regular viewers will know, I generally try and find something optimistic. I try and find some kind of hope or positivity to hang these videos around each time. Gotta be honest with you, this week I'm really not finding anything of that nature. I've just got to call it as I see it. All I'm seeing is further confirmation that full-scale tyranny is being imposed on the people of so-called Great Britain. This will be the case in many other countries around the world at the same time, of course, but from a UK perspective, that's all I'm seeing. Not much to be optimistic about this week, because the crazy bastards, the crazy, sick, depraved, psychopathic lunatics have gone ahead and done what I and so many others predicted they would. They've pushed the second wave narrative. They're pulling their second wave stunt. The crazy bastards, these abominations, they have no imagination, no creativity. They're utterly fucking predictable, very, very boring and very transparent. So it was obvious to me and so many others that this second wave stunt would get pulled. So now we got Boris Johnson coming out and saying that as soon as in 2 weeks' time we could see a spike of the virus coming over from mainland Europe, and this will be as a result of people taking their summer holidays on the continent and coming back home to Britain. So now we're told that there's going to be an enforced 14-day quarantine period for anyone coming back from places like Spain, France, Germany, Belgium and various other European countries. Quite how that's going to be enforced, I don't know. I don't understand how that can be practically applied in any way, but that's the threat we're getting, and we're told that the virus is on the rise again in Spain and all these other places, and we can expect it to follow suit in Britain very soon. So official advice now is for British people to abandon your holiday plans for Europe. If you had a holiday booked for Spain or any of these other European hotspots, you're being told you can't go. So after months and months and months of psychological torture, misery, desolation, loneliness, a joyless, dull existence that's been enforced upon us, a faint glimmer of hope for many people was the idea that they could at least get in a summer holiday of sun, sand, sea and all the rest of it before the summer was up. And now people are having those hopes dashed, and we're back to this miserable, joyless existence that these mad, crazy, psychopathic bastards are trying to impose on us. On top of that, we had the announcement very late on Thursday night, sometime after 9 PM, from that treacherous viper, Matt Wancock, that there is a second wave of the virus that's been identified in certain key areas of northern England. So this includes regions of Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire and certain parts of Lancashire, including specifically Oldham. Now, one thing you notice about all these regions is that they have a very heavy concentration of Asian ethnic minorities, just like Leicester did, the first city to get put on regional lockdown in England. So now we're told that all these areas with similarly large Asian populations have to go back into lockdown, the businesses have to close down, people have to stay at home, they can't mix households, they can't get together with friends and family, and the timing of this announcement, straight after 9 PM on a Thursday evening, the timing of it just happens to coincide with the Muslim festival of Eid, which is about to come into play this weekend. Very important event in the lives of Muslims, very important occasion on their calendar, where families traditionally do just that. They get together, they have meals, they have celebrations, festivities, they go to each other's houses, they hug and embrace each other. Now, of course, they're being told they can't do that. Now, how closely Muslims will observe these draconian regulations that have been dropped on them remains to be seen. It may well be that that community is by and large in defiance of these orders, and I certainly hope that's the place. But I do have to ask myself why these areas specifically were targeted on this particular occasion. It seems to me to be directly victimizing the Asian communities of these regions, and it seems to be inciting racial division between these communities and others in these areas, where if there now is a sharp spike in coronavirus infections on the rise, it will get laid squarely at the feet of the the Asian communities with the idea that they've been spreading this through not observing these distancing rules and getting together and having all these family occasions. So this is a very vindictive, very mendacious plan, which has been announced by Johnson and Hancock and all their cronies. And it's evil, it's wicked, it's more psychological torture, it's manipulation of our minds, and it just proves to you that this is nothing about keeping us safe from some virus which may or may not even exist. It would be a different matter if there really were a deadly pandemic that really was wiping out vast numbers of people, and this could be shown provably to be so. As we've discussed so many times on these videos, that is not the case. The worst case scenario is that this so-called pandemic, this virus, has affected a fraction of 0.1% of people in the land and all over the world. And so the entire nation, the entire world is having all these totalitarian measures dropped on them, being put into lockdown, our lives being made miserable and joyless and soulless on that basis. Less than a fraction of 0.1%. This makes absolutely no logic whatsoever, no common sense, and that, of course, was never what it was all about. It's about straightforward tyranny. And it becomes clear that these crazy fucking bastards, these evil abominations of humanity that have nothing but contempt for the rest of us, far less than wanting to keep us safe, they're not going to stop until they're made to stop. We've had another reminder of that this week. I mean, something else that just adds insult to injury, which totally takes the piss, is a story that emerged recently of a cat which has apparently caught COVID-19. So now this thing, versatile as it is, can jump from a bat that's being eaten in a soup somewhere in a wet market of Wuhan, China. It leaps from the bat into some Chinese dude. That Chinese dude goes into his community, infects a whole load of people. These people get on aeroplanes, and through international travel, they go all over the world, spreading this beastly virus with them as they go, and now somebody has infected their pet cat with it. Of course, the underlying implication here is that now people have to be afraid not only of each other, because we've had other humans demonized, just like we did in the climate change scam, where we were indoctrinated to think that we bad humans were responsible for all the ecological problems that the Earth is experiencing. And it's because of us going about our business, driving our cars, getting on planes, that the Earth is in such a terrible state, and that polar bears at the South Pole no longer have ice caps to cling onto. We know that was all nonsense, but the idea was to demonize us, people, humans. This ties in with the eugenics mindset, as popularised by the likes of Bill Gates and many others who want population reduction. Boris Johnson himself in 2007 made some public comments about how the Earth was overpopulated and we need to address this problem and get the figures down. David Attenborough, national treasure, so-called. Sorry, Sir David. Let's not forget that bit. That's very important when it comes to the BBC. Tells you a lot about these people as well. Sir David Attenborough, long-time asset of the state government arm, the BBC, has long spoken of the problem of overpopulation in the world as well. He wants to reduce these figures. These are eugenicists, and they want us to be fearful of ourselves and of each other. That's what the mask wearing is all about. When you see people scurrying around all fearful in masks in a public place, the implication, the underlying psychological idea there is that these people are your enemy, and they could be infecting you with this virus. They could be very dangerous for you, and they could actually kill you. So you have to wear these masks to minimize the effect that you might be having on other people and them on you, because we humans are very dangerous to each other. Now it's pet cats as well, and this seems to be particularly cruel in the case of elderly people, people that live on their own, and they only have a pet for company, whether it's a pet cat or a pet dog. Now they're being made to feel suspicious of their own pet cat, with the idea that the cat could now infect them and make them ill, or possibly even kill them. I know you've got to be spectacularly naive to fall for that one, but unfortunately many people provably are. So this is what we're up against, and as I say, these crazy lunatic bastards are not going to stop until they're made to stop. They've proven themselves to be like a malignant tumour, a cancer, eating away at a body, at an organism. And you can stem it, you can keep it at bay, you can curtail it temporarily, but eventually it keeps on coming back. It nags away, it prods and pokes, it reminds you that it's there, and it won't go away. The only way a malignant tumour will go away is if it's cut out. Either that, or you remove the cause of the problem. And that's what we're faced with here. The government of the UK, as with so many other countries, is a malignant, cancerous tumour on the body of society, and it has to be cut out, or the root cause of it has to be removed. And we, collectively, are going to have to find a way of doing this. I know we often say we don't know what to do. I know we say it seems hopeless, we feel so helpless. But one way or another, collectively, we are going to have to get our hearts and minds and souls together, united on the same page, and collectively come up with a way of making them stop. Now, the easiest way towards this, it strikes me, would be massive non-compliance with the madness, with the tyranny. Huge numbers of people rising up, standing in their power, taking it back, and sending a very clear message that we do not consent to this madness, this tyranny. We know it's unfounded. We know it's based on lies and deceptions. It can be shown to be so. So we're not going to act the way you decree we need to act. It's against our rights and freedoms. We recognise that we stand in these as free sovereign beings, and we're not going to allow you to trample all over them. We stand in right action. We stand in morality. You stand for the opposite of that, and we're not going to allow it. We're not going to live this way. Now imagine the effect if large numbers of people did make that statement and make it clearly seen by refusing to wear masks, refusing to social distance, refusing to keep away from family and friends and other households, seeing who we want, going where we want, so long as we cause no harm. We have a right in creation, natural born rights and freedoms to live this way, and no man or woman or entity called government has any kind of right to take that away from us. Large numbers of people standing firm in that realization and sending that kind of clear message back would really make a difference. I know we're a long way from that. I know that the vast majority of people are meekly complying with their own slavery, and this is devastating. It's heart-wrenchingly painful for those of us who know better to watch the way that other people have been manipulated by the fear-based propaganda and mind control, and are kowtowing to the agenda in exactly the way the social engineers and the architects of this mind control knew they would. Exactly. Somehow, we've got to find a way of getting through to these people and winning them over and demonstrating that they've been lied to, that they're lied to every time they turn on the fucking TV. And there's half the problem, the fact that people still do pay attention to the TV and to so-called newspapers, and they're being lied to every time a treasonous, treacherous, coward, slave politician gets up there to make some announcement or other on behalf of the higher-ups who dictate to them and tell them what the agenda is to be and give them their orders. Johnson, Wancock, Whitty, all the rest of them, they're just doing the bidding of those who instruct them. And I know there's a school of thought, there's a narrative that goes in line with the Q plan and Trump, and it states that the Q group is working behind the scenes to bring down the deep state cabal. This may or may not be the case. But the narrative goes that in the meantime, nations such as Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and all these other nations around the world, Canada, the Commonwealth countries and others, where we've got these totalitarian governments imposing all these outrageous restrictions on our freedoms, we're being told to just bide our time, ride it out. We're being tested. That's what we're told. We're being tested. The general public have to be made to wake up. The general public have to be made to face up to the fact that the governments of the world are corrupt. The world is nothing like you thought it was. Great evil runs amok and has done for a very long time, and it's all going to be brought to an end. But the general public has to get into a headspace and a spiritual state, an emotional state, where they can actually handle that kind of information. And so they're being softened up for it, so the narrative goes, by getting tested with all these outrageous tyrannies. Well, I don't know if that's the case or not. It doesn't sound very plausible to me at this stage. All I can see is people in this country being kept in a fear-based state. The rest of us who know better being kept in a state of duress against our will, being held in collective punishment with everyone else, waiting for this thing to happen, if it ever does. Now, it makes me wonder how many more suicides are going to occur between now and the end of the year if this is stepped up. How many more people are just going to feel utterly unable to cope with living in these conditions because they're so far removed from everything they've ever known before. They're so far removed from the way we were living in 2019. None of us were prepared for this. None of us asked for it. None of us consented to it. How many people are just not going to be able to cope with this kind of reality and are going to take themselves out of it? How many people are going to suffer mental health issues? These are already off the scale in so many cases. How many people are going to die or get seriously ill from not being able to attend surgery for other ailments, other diseases? Believe it or not, there are other things besides COVID that people are falling ill from, and yet they're not getting the attention, they're not getting the treatment for it because COVID is given the priority for everything to help push this scamdemic agenda along. What's all this going to look like? What are those figures going to be towards the end of the year if this is allowed to continue? What good is the Q plan, which may or may not be a thing, if it's only benefiting people in America? Because I sure as hell don't feel a lot of benefits here in Britain. And if there's a reason to be optimistic about anything, then I've missed it. This week, I would have loved to have brought some reason for optimism to you, but I'm just being honest. It reminds me of another lyric from a classic rap record from the mid-90s by Nonchalant called 5 O'Clock. In the lyric she says, "A statistic, everybody's gone cold ballistic. If they had a good day, damn, I must have missed it." And if there's anything good here, then I've missed it. All I'm catching is reminders of the tyranny. Something else that the traitor Johnson announced yesterday is that the muzzles, the face coverings, are now to be made mandatory in all public places, not just shops and supermarkets, but anywhere that people gather indoors, starting from the 8th of August, as in 8/8. That's the anniversary of the Tate Manson so-called murders event, incidentally, from 1969. But on top of that, the figure 8 symbolises infinity, going on indefinitely forever. So we've got 2 8s there, 8/8. And the dates on which they impose many of these things aren't by accident. So first of all, we had the announcement of face masks being made mandatory in shops and supermarkets from the 24th of July, which is 24/7. The phrase 24/7 is used to mean ongoing, forever, all the time. And now we've got further imposition of the muzzles on the 8th of the 8th, as in infinity, indicating that this is for good, this is here to stay, unless we remove it, because we are all we have, ourselves. We're going to have to do this. We're going to have to find a way. And it may be that large numbers of people waking up to the fact that they've been duped, waking up to the fact that the government and the mainstream media is lying to them, is going to have to come from more and more medical professionals and other people from the inside of these establishments coming forward and blowing the whistle and spilling the beans. So we saw an incidence of that earlier this week on Monday, when a group of doctors in the United States representing SCOTUS, the scientific community of the United States, got together and held a press conference, and they all stepped up and said, our consciences no longer allow us to stay silent. We know that misinformation and bad science is being given to the public in terms of this COVID-19 situation, and we want to set the record straight and tell the story from our perspective. Things aren't the way they've been reported, and the whole thing has been blown out of all proportion. We had one doctor from West Africa, Dr. Emmanuel, talking about how she's administered hydroxychloroquine. Remember, Trump first raised the issue of hydroxychloroquine several weeks ago as an anti-malarial drug that can be used to treat COVID, assuming this is a real thing. In combination with zinc, this doctor was saying, she's got a proven track record of hydroxychloroquine with zinc and these other compounds curing all manner of diseases, including this so-called COVID-19. And yet, this has been suppressed and this has not been made common knowledge. So let's take a little look at a piece of that press conference now to recap on what was said.
Thank you so much, Congressman. So we're here because we feel as though the American people have not heard from all the expertise that's out there all across our country. We do have some experts speaking, but there's lots and lots of experts across the country. So some of us decided to get together. We're America's frontline doctors. We're here only to help American patients and the American nation heal. We have a lot of information to share. Americans are riveted and captured by fear at the moment. We are not held down by the virus as much as we're being held down by the spider web of fear. That spider web is all around us, and it's constricting us, and it's draining the lifeblood of the American people, American society, and American economy. This does not make sense. COVID-19 is a virus that exists in essentially two phases. There's the early phase disease and there's the late phase disease. In the early phase, either before you get the virus or early when you've gotten the virus, if you've gotten the virus, there's treatment. That's what we're here to tell you. We're going to talk about that this afternoon. You can find it on America's Frontline Doctors. There's many other sites that are streaming it live on Facebook. But we implore you to hear this because this message has been silenced. There are many thousands of physicians who have been silenced from telling the American people the good news about the situation, that we can manage the virus carefully and intelligently, but we cannot live with this spider web of fear that's constricting our country. So we're going to hear now from various physicians. Some are going to talk to you about what the lockdown has done to young, to older, to businesses, to the economy, and how we can get ourselves out of the cycle of fear.
Unsurprisingly, in the wake of that video being released, there was a massive exercise in damage limitation on the part of the establishment. Many of the mainstream news outlets, well, I use the word news lightly, in the US scrambled frantically to try and debunk and write off these claims by these doctors. They put out smear campaigns against some of the doctors in themselves, character assassinations, anything to throw people off the track and not make them pay attention to what was being said. And also, unsurprisingly, the likes of YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other major social media and video hosting channel dropped the video. You can still see it on BitChute. I'll put the link in the show notes below, but it was removed from everywhere else, YouTube particularly, because we can't have that kind of truthful, empowering information getting out there, can we? Where are all the doctors of their like in the United Kingdom? That's what I'd like to know. Where are all the employees of the BBC and other mainstream so-called news outlets who have come to realise that their organisation, the outfit of which they're a part, has been knowingly and systematically peddling disinformation to help prop up this agenda and to help the lies continue? And untold damage is being done to millions of people as a result. Where are the consciences of these people kicking in? Where are they leaving their jobs in their droves because they can no longer stand to be a part of it? Why is that not happening? Where are members of the police? Why are they not leaving in their droves and saying we can no longer enforce this kind of madness, this kind of tyranny, this taking away of people's rights, which is completely unfounded, when people have done nothing wrong, when they're doing no harm, when they don't deserve to be treated this way? We're not going to enforce this. We're not going to be the agents for this. Why is that not happening? I mean, the time has long passed for people to be worried about their salaries and their pension plans. How many people have lost their salaries, lost their jobs, lost their entire livelihoods this year anyway, everything they've ever worked for, through no fault of their own, through these outrageous lockdown impositions? So there are some things more important than your salary, such as, for instance, other people's rights and freedoms and the future of humanity, what life is going to look like for future generations, your own children. What kind of world are your children going to have to live in if you, the people I'm speaking to, the people I'm addressing, insiders within the mainstream media, the police, the medical establishment and other institutions, if you consider that your salary and not wanting to rock the boat and just keeping your head down and minding your own business, if that's all that counts, that's all that matters to you, how can you look yourself in the mirror? How can you sleep at night, knowing that if you and many others of your like were to come forward and find some kind of public platform to speak what you know, what you know to be the truth about what's really happening with this agenda. Think what kind of lasting change for good that could bring if enough people got together on the same page like that. But we're not seeing it. I'm going to include a little piece of a characteristic rant from Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com on his show of a couple of weekends ago, going in on the mainstream media. He can put it much better than I can. Here, in no uncertain terms, are his thoughts on what members of the state-owned and corporate-controlled mainstream media really represent.
I've been taking pot shots at all the people that believe in the nonsense of the COVID-19 psyop, okay? So, I'm, putting this one up, which is a meme that I came across this week in my internet travels. It says, it's two Amish guys talking. It says, I wonder why COVID has not affected us. And the other Amish guy is replying, because we don't have TV. And I asked the question, if nobody paid attention to the lying whore media, the lying whore mainstream media of the major networks and the major, mainstream websites, how many people would even be aware that anything different has occurred in society? It would be business as usual. There would be no higher alarm. There would be no higher danger. There would be no higher death rates than happen any other year all around us. The only difference is that the media is telling you to be panicked and afraid. That's the only difference. The mind controllers and their little pets called the mainstream media, you little whore pets, okay? Just absolutely lying for a paycheck because you had garbage for parents, and as a result, you're pieces of trash garbage, you lying whores. That's all it is. That's all you ever are. That's all you are. It's all you ever have been, and probably all you ever will be in your useless, miserable whore lives, okay? And you're just lying to people for a paycheck, and dumb people believe you. And that's all this whole thing really is, folks. You want to really come down to it? Get as offended as you like. It doesn't mean I don't care about other human beings. I care about actually the truth and human freedom and what's going on regarding human suffering, probably more than just about anybody on this planet, okay? So don't pin that bullshit guilt on me. It won't work on this one because I know what my true emotions are and you don't, okay? So don't ascribe your nonsense to me and your, virtue signaling to me, because I know what real virtue is. I know what real rights are. I know what real morality is, and most people don't. Okay? So, I'm going to continue pointing out the hypocrisy and the virtue signaling and the nonsense because people believe the bullshit mainstream media. All right? And it's 2020 and it's far too late in the game for people to still be accepting the word, the completely tainted word of the same people that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Okay? The same people that told us that Iraqis were taking babies out of incubators to kill them. The same people that told us that smoking cigarettes was perfectly healthy. The same people that told us that spraying DDT on children's heads was perfectly fine as a disinfectant method. And on and on and on, the lying and lying. The same people that told us that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. You still believe these whore liars. They're whore paid liars. And people still believe them wholesale. And just do an experiment. Go into a population center, okay? Don't go out into rural America. Go out into a deep population center, a city. Okay, where the bulk of the population is at, where like 85 to 90% of the human population in America is at. Go into a populated region and start asking people if they actually believe what the mainstream media says and if they are trying to tell them the truth. Do this as a social experiment if you don't believe it from me, if you don't accept that it's the truth. I've done this. I don't need to believe anything because I've done an experiment, social experiments with people, with my friends. We have gone out into populated centers and asked them if they believe the mainstream media. And the results that we've gotten are so horrifying that almost every single human being has said, yes, we believe that the mainstream media is trying to do their best effort possible to bring the truth to the American public. They believe that. These little naive children in consciousness. Doesn't matter how old they are. Doesn't matter whether they're 15 years old or 90 years old. It goes up in every age range. They believe the media is telling them the truth. That's how naive the American public is. And, you know, people can make the case, oh, it's getting a little bit better. Yeah, but not that much, folks. And certainly not that fast. Okay, so, you know, this is where we're at.
So, you know, members of these institutions, members of these expressions of the establishment are going to have to come forward eventually and state what they know and find some way of putting their point of view across. Because otherwise, all we're left with is the small number of us, we activists, who care enough about our rights and freedoms and can think critically enough to be able to see what's really going on. We don't swallow the bullshit put out by the mainstream media. We discovered long ago that that's all lies, that's all propaganda and mind control. What's going to happen is just the small group of us that have already been doing so much work. I and my many other brothers and sisters, although not enough of us, just continuing to put the work in, as we have week by week throughout this entire year. And, you know, we feel like we're banging our heads against the wall. We feel like it's an exercise in futility, trying to get through to so many of these mask-wearing, fearful creatures scurrying around, believing there's a deadly virus everywhere. You know, we're just in an echo chamber, just shouting to each other, preaching to the choir. We're sick of it. Of course we are. But when you're spurred on by an obligation to truth in creation and to your conscience, you have no choice but to carry on. It just makes for a very miserable life when it doesn't have to be so. And so we are going to have to keep the efforts stepped up. Today, 1st of August, there's a big protest demonstration event happening in London, kicking off at Hyde Park. Then the march is scheduled to go through the streets of London, eventually to Trafalgar Square and I think the Houses of Parliament or Downing Street. I wish everyone taking part in that the very best of luck and empowerment. I would have liked to have been there myself, but due to certain commitments, I'm unable to be. If there's another one, I'll certainly do everything I can to be at that. So I hope that event is successful and has some impact in sending a very clear message out. Doubtless the media will either ignore it completely or they'll frame it in such a way as to suggest that it was full of antagonists and troublemakers and irresponsible people that weren't social distancing, and they might even try and blame part of this second wave on all these people getting together in close proximity, because that's just what the media does, because they're treasonous sellouts to creation. They're an affront to the people of this land, to God, to creation itself. They're just abominations, and I have no love for them. Apparently there's a bunch of other events happening today as well, protest events around the country marking the 1st of August. So again, I wish all power and all strength to everyone taking part in those events. I hope that they do have some kind of impact. These events, I believe, are important because they do show anyone who is watching that there are some of us that aren't buying the lies. There are some of us that aren't going to go quietly. There are some of us that still have some dignity and self-respect and courage and balls to put up something of a fight before we go down. So they do have value. Okay, what else did I want to mention? Really just a bunch of shows that are in the offing. I was due to guest on Freeman's show this week, In the Free Zone. Sadly, that's had to be postponed due to circumstances, so that's going to be happening later in August. I'm looking forward to getting back together with Freeman to put in a show there. I did record a Good Vibrations episode, part of my podcast series, with the brother known as Isaac Weishaupt of IlluminatiWatcher.com. That's now posted on my Spreaker and on my YouTube. It's Good Vibrations episode 163, and we were talking about Adrenochrome symbolism. So it's all the coded symbolic references to Adrenochrome that have appeared in movies and other popular culture vehicles over the decades, moving on from symbols of mind control and satanic ritual abuse. Obviously, it's a dark and devastating and very unsettling subject when you get into the extraction of adrenochrome from children at the hands of these absolutely sick, depraved diseased, subhuman bastards that practice this activity. But I feel that some kind of public disclosure of this activity is very, very close, and I wanted to get ahead of the curve in putting that show out now. So you might want to check that out. Isaac Weishaupt is very well clued up on these matters. He's got a very sound understanding of occult and esoteric matters, so that one comes highly recommended. Also, earlier in the week, I committed the revolutionary act of recording a show that actually wasn't about the coronavirus, which is an incredible thing to do in these times. It was actually episode 3 of the Magical Mystery Talk, which is the three-way conversation that I have with Matt Sergiu, the proprietor of the Occult Beatles blog site in the UK, and Desiree Hall of the Number 9 blog in the United States, both concerned with kind of occult and esoteric and conspiratorial aspects of the Beatles, the most fascinating group of all time to get into. And we made the point that even with everything else that's going on in the world, and even with it now being over 50 years since that group split, we still find it fascinating to have conversations about aspects of the Beatles. So we went in for another 2 hours with episode 3 of Magical Mystery Talk. If you've got any kind of an interest in the Beatles from the point of view of music groups like them being used for social engineering and mind control purposes, then you might want to take a listen to that show. It's pretty far out stuff. So that's MMT episode 3. I've got a show with Emily Moyer coming up next week, my friend from over there in Los Angeles. I'm going to be jumping onto her show, talking about, among other things, how the dance and electronic music community has responded to this whole COVID situation, and some of the reactions we've seen from DJs and producers and, you know, figures that are prominent in the dance and electronic music field. I tend to get into these kind of conversations with Emily because there's not many other show hosts that know anything about dance music or that care for it or the culture, which is a shame because there's a lot to be said there, and there are a lot of lessons to be conveyed about how social engineering gets done through scenes and movements and trends, such as we have in electronic dance music. So watch out for that show with Emily Moyer. Next week, Tuesday the 4th of August, I'm going to be in person giving a presentation at Truth Juice in Birmingham, England. That's at the E57 Social Club on the south side of Birmingham. Kicks off round about 8 p.m. Try and get there about 7:30 if you can. And I'll be looking at aspects of the COVID-19 narrative that were foreshadowed and about which we were forewarned. So it's symbolic aspects of it that appeared in movies and popular culture vehicles as usual. And also having a look at some documentation which showed that there was advanced knowledge of this whole stunt years and years before it came in on the part of certain aspects of the establishment. The public were the last to know. Everybody else has known for years that this was coming. It's a deeply insidious and far-reaching agenda. So I'll be covering that at Truth Juice next Tuesday, the 4th of August. Let me just give a shout out to, I got an email asking me to give a shout to a group of people in Africa, Eswatini, aka Swaziland, aka Wakanda. Shout to all the crew out there in Swaziland. There's no names attached, but apparently this video goes down pretty well in that part of the world each week, so respect to you guys. Hope you found some value in this one. I'm pretty sure that's all I wanted to cover. As I say, I would have loved to have brought some kind of optimism. I would have loved to have ended this on some kind of positive note. There are people out there who will tell you good things are happening behind the scenes, that COVID is a smokescreen for all kinds of stuff that we don't get to hear about yet, but we will in due course. I still hold out some hope for that being the case, but in terms of tangible evidence and verifiable proofs of it, I don't have any to hand. All I'm left with is what I see and hear and sense around me, and all that has involved in the last few days here in the UK has been further and further stepping up of the tyranny, more prodding and poking of us to see what they can get away with, the malignant tumour growing ever stronger. It's time it was cut out, and it's time the root cause of the problem was removed. Whatever that looks like, whatever form it's going to take, only we can do this collectively. Those of us that care enough, those of us that have not been taken in by the fear and the mind control. And I'll leave you with those sentiments, with that thought. Thanks to everyone for listening. I appreciate all the feedback I get. It's good to know that people find value in this video each week. I may not be able to bring you one next week, as I'm going to be away on some family time once again, just enjoying simple pleasures in life while we still can. So I'll be back with you as soon as I'm able. In the meantime, thanks for watching.